I think that the people I kill need killing. That's what I think.
You left men hanging from meat hooks.
They got off easy, in my opinion.
You shut up a hospital.
Yeah, nobody got hurt or didn't deserve it.
What about you, Frank? What happens the day someone decides you deserve it?
Tell you what, they better not miss.
Another major actor just joined the cast of the upcoming Disney Plus series Daredevil Born Again. Jon Bernthal will reprise the role of Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, for the first time since Netflix's Punisher series wrapped in 2019. But how exactly does this deadly vigilante fit into Daredevil's new series? Can a character as dark and violent as Frank Castle even work in the MCU? Let's break down the Punisher's story so far, his dynamic with Daredevil, and what might lie in store for Frank as he makes his way into the MCU. Bernthal originally debuted as Frank Castle in the second season of Netflix's Daredevil series. Frank plays a key role in season 2, which is set after his family is murdered and Frank has begun his one-man war on crime. The newspapers have labeled him the Punisher. Daredevil and Punisher have several violent encounters in the early part of season 2, including one where Frank ties up Matt and tries to force him to execute a criminal in order to prove a point about lethal force being the only real option. Matt's paralegal, Karen Page, begins digging into Frank's tragic past and learns of the tragic day his family was gunned down in a park. After turning himself in, Frank is put on trial with Nelson and Murdoch defending him. Though they nearly succeed in proving Frank is the victim of a vast military conspiracy and not liable for his actions, Frank himself torpedoes their defense when he takes the stand. He's sent to Rikers Island, where he strikes up a short-lived alliance with fellow inmate Wilson Fisk. Fisk helps Castle escape, reasoning that he could help weaken Fisk's criminal rivals through his vigilante crusade. Frank makes a return appearance late in the season, lending his deadly marksmanship in a battle against the Hand. Daredevil Season 2 paves the way for Netflix's Punisher series, which digs much deeper into his bloody origin story and his quest to bring those who betrayed him to justice. Season 1 opens with Frank killing the last of the men who shot his family, though the actual masterminds behind that operation are much more elusive. Frank teams up with a hacker named Micro, who faked his own death after being targeted by the same conspiracy. The two attempt to track down their targets while eluding capture by the ruthless DEA agent, Dinah Madani. Frank also reunites with his old war buddy Billy Russo, but in typical Marvel fashion, it turns out Russo is wrapped up in the conspiracy that killed Frank's family. The two have their inevitable showdown in the Season 1 finale, where Frank leaves the vain Russo badly beaten and covered in horrific facial scars. Season 2 pits Frank against both new enemies like the fundamental assassin John Pilgrim and old ones like the battle-scarred, vengeful Russo/Jigsaw. But the main takeaway from Season 2 is that Russo is dead and Frank is now fully committed to his war and his new identity as the Punisher. There's no more chance of a happy retirement for this soldier. There's a good reason Punisher first appeared in Daredevil Season 2 and why Born Again is being used as the vehicle to reintroduce Bernthal's character in the MCU proper. Daredevil and Punisher have a deep connection. That's not to say they're friends. Even if Frank Castle were capable of maintaining healthy relationships, he doesn't much care for Matt Murdock's non-lethal approach to vigilantism. That's really the crux of this particular Marvel rivalry. Frank Castle believes that criminals are a menace to be systemically eradicated by any means necessary. To him, anything less than lethal force is a useless half measure that only delays the inevitable. But though Daredevil takes the law into his own hands every night, he ultimately believes that the system must be upheld. It's up to the courts to sort good from bad and decide if criminals deserve to die.
Everything you do out there in the streets, Red, it doesn't work. Did you know that?
Oh, and what you're doing is better?
What I do, I just do. It's out of necessity.
Come on. You know you're not the only one, right? Who did you lose? Huh? Was it someone you loved? Well, boo-hoo. Let me tell you something, buddy. Everybody's lost someone. Doesn't mean you have to do this.
Matt sees Frank as a tragic victim of corruption and a lost soul that he desperately wants to reach. Many times over the course of their comic book history together, Matt has tried to make Frank see reason and turn away from the dark crusade that's consumed his life. To date, he hasn't been successful. Daredevil Season 2 adapts what is arguably the most important encounter between the two characters when Frank ties Matt up on a rooftop and gives him an impossible choice. He can either shoot a gangster named Grotto, shoot Frank himself to stop Grotto from being killed, or do nothing and allow the Punisher to do his work. Matt tries to find a fourth option by escaping this literal death trap, but he fails to save Grotto in time. Meanwhile, in the comic, Matt actually breaks and chooses to shoot Frank, but in that case, he discovers the gun was never loaded. For all that Frank rejects Matt's beliefs, he respects him too much to actually allow him to become a killer. He just wants to prove a point, which really sums up their relationship in a nutshell. Bernthal is now the latest Netflix actor to reprise their role on a Disney Plus series, following in the footsteps of Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk. Whether that means the Netflix Punisher series is actually part of the MCU canon is a bit trickier. Nothing in She-Hulk or Hawkeye explicitly links back to those older seasons of Daredevil, and in some ways D'Onofrio's Fisk seems like a completely different character in Hawkeye, even if D'Onofrio himself is adamant they're the same. At the very least, we can probably assume that Born Again will build on the general Punisher-Daredevil dynamic established in the Netflix series. Frank may not be an outright villain in the show, but he will be a philosophical rival, and we'll probably see Matt struggle to work alongside Frank while also limiting the amount of blood he spills. On that note, it's worth asking how a character as dark and violent as Frank Castle is even supposed to function in the MCU. Born Again is reportedly darker than most MCU fare, but will Disney be willing to go full TVMA? Will Frank kill as often and as grotesquely as he did in his previous series, or will the character be toned down for this relatively lighter superhero setting? That's a conundrum Marvel has often struggled with on the comic book side of things. For many years, Marvel published two distinct incarnations of the Punisher: the darker version seen in the superhero-free series Punisher Max, and the Punisher who exists within the confines of the Marvel Universe. Often, the latter version is pushed in more extreme and colorful directions, reflecting a world where many of the worst criminals are costumed supervillains rather than drug kingpins and human traffickers. Writers like Matt Fraction and Rick Remender popularized an approach where the Punisher takes a break from targeting ordinary criminals and shifts his war to the world's supervillains. For example, when Norman Osborn became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s replacement, Hammer, Frank immediately attempts to assassinate him and draws the wrath of the Dark Avengers. Marvel's latest Punisher series has Frank taking over leadership of the Hand and becoming a superhuman death dealer in his own right. Fisk's portrayal in Hawkeye may even hint that this is the direction the MCU is headed with Frank. Whereas Fisk is an ordinary human, albeit a very strong one, in Netflix's Daredevil, he appears to have a degree of actual super strength and invulnerability in the MCU. His shared history with Frank from the Netflix days is something that could easily be built upon for Born Again. After all, Frank promised to kill Fisk next time they meet, and we have yet to see him try to make good on that threat. The Punisher battling an invulnerable Kingpin means Born Again can go wild without the need for Netflix levels of blood and gore. That may be the approach Marvel takes as they work the Punisher into the fabric of the MCU. We may see less of Frank gunning down criminals and more of him waging war on actual supervillains. That would also mean upgrading his armory from traditional guns and explosives to more powerful and more TV-14 friendly weapons. Maybe the MCU will even adapt the story where Frank becomes the undead monster known as Frankencastle. Or perhaps Bernthal's return is a sign that Marvel is ready to fully commit to the idea that some MCU projects are for adults only. We're getting an R-rated Deadpool 3, so is it really out of the question that we might see a Punisher series every bit as dark and violent as the Netflix version? After all, if Marvel wants to tone down the Punisher for the MCU, why bring back Bernthal in the first place? Thanks for watching! I'm Kim Horcher, and for more Daredevil, here are 3 ways the MCU changed the character when he showed up in She-Hulk, so make sure to check that out. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.
Yeah.